Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. I'm Jordan. Here's your flash briefing for the week of August 18th. City Council will meet for a regular session Tuesday night at 6 in Council Chambers in City Hall. Meetings are open to the public or watch live on the city's YouTube channel. If you can't watch, catch the recorded meeting on demand on the YouTube channel or by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter, which breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe at cityofls.net. Mayor Baird's State of the City address packed the House, marking the first official public event at the city's newest destination, Green Street. Mayor Baird highlighted achievements and strategic investments made in public safety, infrastructure, and economic development, while sharing his vision for the city's future. The celebration continued with a ribbon cutting for Green Street's grand opening, an unforgettable kickoff to the weekend. You can watch the recorded State of the City on the city's YouTube channel. Green Street's grand opening was a huge success, and we want to thank all of those who volunteered their time to help over the weekend to make the grand opening what it was. Be sure to follow Green Street LS on Instagram and Facebook to keep up to date on what's to come. Have a 4-legged friend at home that could use a nice splash in the pool? Pooch Paddle is this Tuesday, August 19th at 5 p.m. at Summit Waves. It's just $7 a dog. Learn more at lsparks.net. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
Traditionally, we think as police officers, those responding to law enforcement needs within the community. But honestly, we are there to serve our citizens, and our citizens do go into crisis. They do have mental health crises, and we're being called to those scenes on a regular basis. In order to help serve those citizens better, we did initiate the Crisis Intervention Team Program. These are officers that are specially trained to de-escalate crisis situations. Recently, we've brought co-responders onto the scene, licensed qualified mental health professionals housed within our police department, and they respond with those officers directly to those scenes where a crisis is occurring so they can interact with that citizen and get them the help they need right there on that scene.
The co-responders are either a bachelor or master level in a behavioral health related field. They wear plain clothes, they don't carry weapons or anything like that.
I have a police radio that I listen to all day. Listen for, those key words: mental health, behavioral health, crisis.
There's a lot of officers that just call for me. I have my own radio number.
I also have the ability to self-dispatch to them and say 982 is en route.
Officers en route, 914 Armstrong.
So typically I arrive after they've made it safe. I'll make contact and get kind of the rundown, and then I just kind of jump right in.
I'm like, hey, my name's Allison. I'm a mental health professional. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to take you to jail or arrest you.
Sometimes all a person needs is a voice, someone neutral, someone outside that, can listen. I do a lot of safety planning, including family, their support network, who's close to you. If they're home alone, who can come over and hang out with you today? Can we lock away your sharps? Can we put up your meds? Do you need meds? Can we get you over to the urgent care to get you assessed for your medications? Some of them also are like, oh, I'm so glad you came. This made me feel so much better.
Our main goal as co-responders is to, one, get people connected to the services that they need, and also divert from emergency rooms and jails.
And they almost get a different view of the police responding. That lets me know you care and the officers care.
Please, please, how can we help you?
My husband has...
In 2020, we had 722 mental health-related calls for service. 2022, by that time, 1,479. These mental health-related calls for service are increasing. How we're responding to that is increasing the number of crisis intervention team officers we have available, as well as the number of co-responders we have available to respond on these calls.
So what I think is important for the community to know about the co-responder program is that we're here, we exist. All you have to do when you call 911 is ask for us. Say, hey, I want a co-responder to respond to this crisis, and we'll go. I was really struggling about 8 years ago on my personal journey with mental health, and I met some amazing social workers and amazing programs that have helped me get to where I am today. I really couldn't see myself doing anything else. We want to help, and that's what we love to do.
So I had a client, we got a call, she had some suicidal ideations, and she really felt that she had nobody. And and getting to know her story and getting to know who comes around and sees you, well, then we found a support person and they responded immediately. And we made a plan. I called back and checked on her in an hour, and then I checked on her in 2 hours. We were able to get her into the additional services to where she talks to someone every week or more. I just took a person that really just thought they had nobody and nobody would show up for them, and show them you do. And you'll be amazed who is in your corner if you just simply say, I need a little help.
Councilmember Hodges.
Thank you. I love where you guys are coming from. You're local and you're all kind of coming together. But where I'm struggling with from the last time that we talked about this, I think it was maybe October.
I actually grew up in my district. We moved here my sophomore year in high school. My parents still live in the same house, and I just went through high school here and then have stayed in Lee Summit ever since. The neighborhood that my parents live in is Canterbury. My favorite thing, and I still do to this day, is I love to go running. They have the best sidewalks. I feel you can go for days. So now I still get to do that. Since I live not too far from them, I get to use those same routes that I took during high school, and it's just fun. All right, let's see it, Jess. Come on. We're a big soccer family. I love sports, I love to watch sports, and it's even more fun to watch sports when my kids are in it. I coach my middle daughter Josie's team, and I have since kindergarten. We do the basketball, we do softball, we're gonna do volleyball, and it's just so much fun. Something that I would like to accomplish while on city council is to get more family activities here. You know, I don't want to have to be driving my family to, say, the Kansas side or any other city but my own. And I want to be able to invest in our city and make family memories in our city.
Open the public hearing in the matter of K1 Speed Diventures.
Crack Shack, Blue Jeans Golf.
Councilmember Hodges.
I just want to say thank you for bringing this to Lee Summit. I grew up at this. My grandpa took us there, so I'm excited that now I can take my kids there.
Bill number 23-0, pre-construction services for the downtown Market Plaza project.
I'm just as excited as everybody else about the downtown marketplace. I'm extremely excited about the community that it's going to bringing more family things to do to the city and right in the heart of it.
When you presented the numbers, the first time you came to us, it was 25.5%, and then
people were like, oh, being on council, it's not a lot of work, I think it was a bit of a surprise when there's so much info that you realize you just don't know. Even something as simple as sidewalks. It's like you don't realize how much goes into something like that. After a couple months, I'm like, okay, I'm finally, catching the groove of how things work, learning new things, but also feel like I've got some things under my belt as well. It's been a great experience so far.
I call to order this meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee for Monday, August 18th of 2025. Can we get a roll call, please?
Chair Shields?
Here.
Vice Chair Lovell? Mayor Pro Tem Lopez?
Here.
Councilmember Funk?
Here.
Okay. We are going to do a little agenda management before we get started, if that's okay. If it works for staff, is it okay if we move the budget calendar presentation up and do the municipal judge discussion after that?
Yeah, that should be fine. Thank you.
Then we're going to make that change. Then I would look for a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Chair, I'd like to approve the motion to approve the agenda as discussed.
And I second.
Okay. A motion and a second to approve the revised agenda. Can we get a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Funk?
Aye.
Chair Shields?
Aye. All right. Do we have any public comment today or any members of the public wishing to speak?
Nope, we haven't received anything from the public.
Okay, then we'll move on to our main business. First item is 2025-7052, approval of the July 7th, 2025 Finance and Budget Committee action letter. Do we have any discussion from the committee? And if not, I would look for a motion.
Chair, I look to move approval of the July 7th, 2025 Finance and Budget Committee action letter.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the July 7th action letter. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Funk?
Aye.
Chair Shields?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez?
Aye.
All right. Next item on our agenda is TMP-3414, an ordinance approving the 2025 and 2026 Combat Drug Commission LESBI agreement by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Jackson County, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor to execute the same by and on behalf of the city.
Hello, John Bunker, Deputy
Hey,
Chief.
you don't look like Nicole Walter.
No, I'm here for Nicole. We've had a reorganization too, so when this was put in, she was in a different role, so I am stepping in for her today. I think most of you have seen this agreement in years past. It is somewhat of an annual agreement. The numbers change from what we receive from Combat. This is funding that primarily will cover, well, when I say primarily, mostly cover the 4 impact officers that we have working in our schools and what used to be called DARE. So very beneficial to us, but I won't belabor that. If anybody has any specific questions, though, I can answer that. It's a value of $250,000 this time.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or discussion from the committee?
I do have one question.
Yes, please.
Does this cover the youth court process too?
So the youth court is not specific assigned officers. While they're officers that do it each time, they're actually part of the impact group or our other youth services. Some of them are school resource officers. It's an additional program that is similar to the Explorer program that's not necessarily needing a funding source.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I know.
All right, I would look for a motion if there's no further discussion.
Chair, we're moving this to full council, right?
With a recommendation of approval, if you so desire.
I move excuse me, I'll start over. I will move to motion this to full council for approval and ordinance approving the 2025 and 2026 Combat Drug Commission agreement between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri, Jackson County, and authorizing the mayor to execute the same by on behalf of the city.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to recommend TMP-3414 to council with a recommendation of approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Chair Shields?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Funk?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Next item on our amended agenda is the presentation of the 25-26 budget calendar.
Good afternoon, Eric Stoyanov, Budget Manager. It seems like we just passed the budget and now we are looking ahead to the next one. So following the positive feedback we had with the past budget processes, this calendar pretty much follows that same format. You'll see we have a lot of monthly budget versus actual reports, similar to how we talked about during the budget process, but we want to provide those monthly reports just to stay on top of any trends and make everyone aware if we're seeing negative or positive trends with the budget versus actuals. Really, the heavy lifting starts in January, but this is more for just informational purposes, but that's when our budget entry will start. One change we will have for this budget process is we just implemented Workday now we're doing phase 2 of the Workday implementation, which includes adaptive planning. That'll be our budgeting tool moving forward. And so we're supposed to go live with that in January, and then that will be when our budget entry begins as well. So a lot of things will be happening once we hit the new year. And then February, that's the deadline for some of those budget entries, schedule of fees, expansion requests. We'll be meeting with departments and with the city manager in March. And then starting in April, that is when we will bring forward the general fund budget presentation and expansions. We will do the presentation of other funds and other departments in May, and then we are aiming to do the first public hearing on May 12th with hopeful adoption on May 19th. But this kind of keeps with what we did with the past one, where we tried to move it up instead of going for middle of end of June, moving it into May, because it seemed like there was positive feedback about moving it a little bit earlier into the year. So stand for any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. It does seem fast to be digging into this already again, but I appreciate the pre-planning. Do we have any question or discussion from the committee? No? I think we're just looking forward to getting to work with you.
Yeah,
All
more
right.
fun, budget fun.
Always. All right, the next item on our agenda, 2025-7019, continued discussion of municipal judge compensation. I understand that Mayor Pro Tem Lopez will be recusing for this item.
Yes, I will recuse.
And from staff's advisement, I understand that we can have a discussion at this point, but since we would only have 2 members of the committee participating, we can't make any motions to council or anything at this point.
That is correct.
Okay. Mr. Dunning, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Shields. Mark Dunning, City Manager. As you mentioned, continued discussion on municipal judge compensation from our July Finance and Budget meeting. There were 3 areas that I noted from that past meeting to kind of circle back on, and those 3 being further clarification on legal opinions as to what is considered for additional duties. So I'll cover some of that information. Another question about if we're pursuing I'll call it specialty court system, drug court or mental health court, would the work entailed to pursue those initiatives be considered additional duties? And I can hit that. The answer to that one's pretty easy. The answer to that is yes. That's additional work, additional responsibilities of what's going on today that doesn't occur today. So that would be considered additional duties. And then the third aspect to come back and share more information on is what does it take to design, implement, and put in place a specialty court such as a drug court or a mental health court. And so I'll circle back to the first one, a little more details with regard to what is considered additional duties. I circled back on a phone call with our legal counsel, outside legal counsel who provided the legal opinion on this. And I used the same analogy I used in here, 1,000 cases a week, and if we were running 2 dockets, just for simple math, 500 and 500, and if that were to be shaped into 4 dockets of 250 each, is that considered additional duties? And the response to that was no, that's same workload, just spread out in a different number of days. So that's the analogy that I used, I think, here at the Finance and Budget, and it kind of pitched back to our legal counsel. So that was the response to that. With regard to, I already mentioned, pursuing the work necessary to pursue a drug court or a mental health court, that would be considered additional duties. So that was made clear. And then if those are implemented, yes, those would continue to be additional services and duties that were performed. So those were those 2 points. Then with regard to pursuing a specialty court, I did provide in the packet, the state of Missouri has treatment court standards just as a background reference. And I'll be the first to admit I'm no expert in this space. And I believe, I'll look to both judges. Do you want to share a little bit about the pursuit of specialty courts, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so, Chair, that's the extent of the information that I'm updating from the last meeting, but be happy to answer questions as we can
continue to consider this.
Yeah, and I think we both had the same, both of the judges had the same question that weren't unfamiliar with how this would work. In the event there's not a third member present, then nothing can move forward, but rather we could just have a discussion. Would we then need to return for a third member to be present to advance anything?
So at this point, we don't have any formal motion or ordinance on our agenda, so there's not really anything to recommend to council at this point in terms of setting it as another agenda item to direct staff to go and draft something or do additional research. Is that something that we can do with just 2 members on the dais at this point? I think so, since...
I think just general feedback, because then we'd be developing a proposal, right? That wouldn't go any further until we had a committee that would give us that direction.
So I think we can discuss it and give some general feedback to staff. We just don't have the ability to, make a motion to change the salaries, to recommend to council for approval to change salaries. That we can't actually make a motion today, but we can direct staff to bring us a motion for consideration at the next meeting if we want to.
Okay, because here's where I'm at. We have been trying to get in front of you for an incredibly long amount of time. And the way that it finally got effectuated was I taped brown paper bags to the front of the bench for the public to see, to try to get the public, if they wanted to. I didn't tell them to do anything. If you have experienced long wait times, we hear you, and taped it all across so that, because I could not get in front of you. So then we got in front of you, because then there was a flurry of emails. And I'm not saying that it's your fault or anyone here. I don't think anyone was hearing that we were trying to get in front of you. And so we came, and then we got rescheduled because there wasn't a quorum. So then we're here today, and we appear, and it's the first time in my life I've not picked my child up on their first day of school, but I needed to be here for this because this is so important. And then we're here, and we were not told that. It's almost like, well, we can do as much as we can today, which you only have so much you can do, and then we will have to set it for something else or refer it for something else, when this has been something that has gone on for so long that I think it has just gotten so out of control and expensive. And so that's why it's just disheartening. I wish we would have known we didn't have enough people here today. We would have certainly liked to have come back another time. And that's why I didn't want to cut Mark off, but I didn't want to get too deep into it if we just need to come back.
So there's a lot there. A couple things I want to say. One is, for me, making a priority to put this on the agenda, part of what I had been waiting for was our outside counsel's legal opinion, because I needed to understand that. And then I pushed to get this on our agenda. When I was told that we wouldn't have quorum for a meeting earlier this month, I said, let's poll the members and find time when we can get a quorum and have this meeting, because I don't want to put this issue off until next month. They said this is a light agenda. We could probably just wait until next month. And I said, well, I don't want to push this discussion another month. So I can understand the frustration, but I do want you to understand we have made this priority, and I pushed as hard as I could to keep this conversation moving and not let it stall out. So
sure,
it's too bad that one of our members wasn't able to make it today. I'm not in control of their schedule, and we're doing the best that we can. And I still want to continue this discussion and see if we can't find a consensus among the two of us that are up here to direct this either to staff to bring back some kind of ordinance language, or to take it to the council for discussion of the issue. I need to see how this discussion actually goes today. I'm not really sure what else to say. I feel like we're doing everything that we can on this dais to keep this conversation moving and not let it
push. And if there was a third member, And is it my understanding that then maybe there could be something like, okay, let's develop ordinance language?
So I
and-
can still, we can still request, I believe, for the staff to bring back a more fleshed out proposal based on our consideration. I just can't take a motion today, which again, there's not one on the agenda. It's just, I can't move and have Councilmember Funk second and vote to send something to council today because there's only 2 of us up here that can vote on this matter. So.
I understand. I know it's like 5th grade student count.
And I know you understand recusals, that's, you know, that's, I'm sure you're very familiar with what that issue is. So I think the best thing at this point is to continue the discussion. Because I want to hear what research you guys have done about what it takes to actually set these courts up. Like, that is actually really important information that we want to understand, so that we can kind of understand the scope of that additional duty and what that would entail, so that we can work on making a recommendation to council that, again, it would obviously take the full body voting to make any kind of actual change to the duties or the salary. So.
Can we visit just briefly, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Is there another opportunity where there would be a quorum that you're aware of that isn't?
At our meeting next month, we meet once a month. As far as I know, I think, I don't know if staff has polled for a quorum for next month to see who's going to be at that meeting. If we know that one of us is missing, I can push to have our alternate attend. But it would be, what's our September meeting date? The 3rd. Yeah, so it'd be the 3rd, the Wednesday after Labor Day is our next meeting. But I think they just polled for quorum on that today, so I don't know who's able to attend yet.
Sharon, did I say? So,
it's already the 18th.
Just to, to kind of help out what
yeah, please.
Councilmember Shields was saying as a chair, we can still, even if we had, and Ms. Lake, you can correct me if I'm wrong, even if we had a 3rd person, we would still do the same thing. We don't have an ordinance in front of us, period. Even if we had Councilmember Lovell here, we still don't have an ordinance. What we can still do is what we want to hear your discussion. We want to have this discussion because even if Councilmember Lovell was here, we're still going to tell staff as a consensus, this is what we want drafted. Mm-hmm. No matter what, if we had someone here tonight, mm-hmm. Judge Ulteri, we wouldn't vote on anything.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe it had to be a 2 out of 3 thing or something.
If we didn't have meetings minds, if I said absolutely no and Councilmember Funk said absolutely yes, it would be hard for us to make a consensus recommendation. But generally, it would be unusual for us to make a motion at this time. Like, legally, I think we could, but I don't have I want the legal minds in the city to actually write up the language of what that would look like and not just try to do something off the cuff. So.
Yeah, so if one of you is in favor of it proceeding and one of you isn't, does it just die at that point?
So, my feeling is that regardless of how I actually come down at the end of this discussion, I think the full council needs to discuss it. So I am not, as the chair of this committee, going to kill this discussion. I think the most likely outcome, if we get to the end of this discussion and we're not in consensus, is that I would say, I think that we should send this to the full council for a discussion there, that we weren't able to really come to a good consensus and we need input of the rest of the members of our body.
Okay.
So that's I think, if we don't come to a firm consensus between the two of us, I think that's probably what I would recommend at the end of this. And I think we have, I mean, Mr. Dunning, if that was what we asked you to do, even without 3 members up here asking you to do it, would that be enough direction for you to take it to the council for discussion?
Yes, a committee can move something to the council for full consideration.
We just don't have, we can't make a motion on it, but you can still do that because you know there's interest for the council to take it up. And
that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I feel better. Can we go ahead? Sorry, I
Yeah,
wanted to flush that.
We're trying to be good partners up here, but we just need to.
Oh,
get
I
into
don't
the meat of
disagree
it.
with you. I'm just ignorant on how it goes. How many votes, a quorum, I just get lost.
Oh, it's okay.
This is not
Well,
my wheelhouse.
Council committees have 4 members. A quorum to meet is 3 members. We have 3 members, so we're able to meet today. However, since Mayor Pro Tem Lopez has to recuse, we don't have a quorum to actually hold a vote on this particular item. So that's why we're in the situation we are right now. So
I understand.
Just for clarity. So,
No, and I do
Yeah.
appreciate it because I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Judge Lopez and I have each went off in different directions since the last time we were here, doing a considerable amount of research and talking to a considerable amount of people. But she and I will disagree on things, but we agree on most everything involving this situation. Thank you so much. All right, we both feel like this has gotten overly complicated and off base, in that we do understand you have to have additional duties for there to be additional compensation. We are of the opinion it's very simple. Requiring the judges to devote an additional day to the City of Lee Summit throughout the work week, whether it's dockets, meetings, overseeing personnel, is an additional duty. The duty right now is 1 day. You make the requirement 2 days. You have your working for Lee Summit. That's the additional duty, period. And so then I had to go down. So it's kind of lost on us how complicated this has become, because then I had to go down a rabbit hole to try to define duty in all these cases. We're all curious. And I even thought that was a lot to do, but I couldn't find anything. No legal definition. You've got fiduciary duty, then a duty of care. And it was just looking for something, a needle in a haystack. I couldn't find a legal definition of it that was at all or is really fitting to a situation such as this, which is unique. So then I just went to Black's Law Dictionary and Webster's dictionary definition of duty, which is just an obligation. That's what it is. That's why this, there's been so much that's gone on. And as far as because there's so much we need to do, and it is not just centered around a mental health court. We love the idea, and we think the need is there to address the mental health issues in this community. It's so bad. My dryer went out, and I'm not kidding. I was at that laundromat at 6 o'clock in the morning yesterday, and it was just, can I talk to you? Oh, I'm going to go kill somebody. There were people there because of the heat that were in there that had clear mental health issues, and it just kind of rang in my head because of what we're here today. So even though that's a soft spot for us and we see a desperate need in the community, there's so many more things that we need that time for that are additional duties. But again, we think that additional duty to do our job, you guys will be here. You will devote your day. You won't be out at the zoo with your family. You won't be working at another court. You will be Lee Summits on that day, that additional day, period. Message received, that's what we're doing. And we're setting our meetings, we're doing our things. And I did ask the judge in Raytown, just kind of off the cuff. I had a discussion with her. It was very soon after our last meeting. And I said, can I ask you a question? And attorneys are good at oftentimes asking questions that are open. And I said, and she used to sub for us quite a bit, but we'll sub for each other, so we haven't utilized her recently. But she's in our court just nearly every week. And I said, do you think if we were here an additional day, that would be an additional duty? Because she's elected and she understands how you cannot receive a pay raise. And she has been there for 30 years. So she's had plenty of elections. And she's like, oh yeah, an extra day's a duty. Yeah, and you need it. And I just kind of stopped. I didn't need to get into all the weeds. I said, okay, we're just tossing around something. I didn't need to go vomit all of the history there. But so that's why we think it's that simple. And then the outside counsel was hired, and outside counsel, I'm just talking about her professionally. I like her very much, very much. I don't really know why outside counsel would even necessarily need to be hired. This isn't really an us versus you kind of thing. It is, I would have hoped, a more collaborative effort. And I don't know why Mr. Head suddenly tapped out of a court issue when he's been overly tapped in the past. So then it was only after Judge Lopez had a conflicting theory, then all of a sudden we had to hire an outside counsel. Well, the outside counsel that we hired, we didn't hire, that was retained, I don't know who does it, but wonderful person who has no experience that I am aware of in municipal court as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, in government law, never written a treatise on anything like this, never written a law article on anything like this. And that's why back in January of this year, I wrote an email to Mark, but I didn't send it to him. I just sent it to Judge Lopez and said, hey, do you mind if I send this? And she said yes. So I didn't send it. But I think, fast forward, this is in January, you fast forward 8 months, because again, it's lost on us how the additional day is not an additional duty. And so Mark hasn't gotten this email, and I won't read the entirety of it, but even back then it said, Dear Mark, I want to voice a bit of confusion we are having regarding Nancy Kenner's role in the legal issue regarding additional dockets and compensation of judges. Fast forward. We really weren't sure why anybody needed to be retained or what the purpose was, but we went with it. And we aren't sure why Nancy Kenner's opinion would be binding in any kind of form, or binding upon whom, or why she would be any kind of an authority in this area. I said, between the two of us, I counted 27 emails we sent to Nancy explaining things or answering questions that she had. We met with her in person. Judge Lopez talked to her on the phone. I talked to her on the phone. We hope to have the issue resolved, but yet we received another question today. We agree that she asked a question that we have answered several times. I'm not disparaging Nancy, but at this point, her involvement has created an incredible delay, and we aren't sure what the purpose is at this point, or what we're doing. She's delving into questions about how municipal courts operate, and she's never been to municipal court that I'm aware of, other than maybe a ticket for a friend or something, I don't know. But I said, it's none of my business what it's costing the city, but at this point, I'm concerned we are paying a significant amount of money, and we're not sure who her opinion is that's binding at this point. I mean, between the two of us, what did I say? So
Judge Altieri.
Yeah.
At this point, like just facts, like we have obtained outside counsel. We did get an opinion from them that we want to advise us as we make this decision. It's our job then, as the elected body, to weigh that legal advice and what we see as the level of, as with any time that we get advice from an attorney, to say, they're telling us here is our opinion, here is the possible risk for you, and now you make a decision. So we have that. It's part of our record, and I understand that you disagree with it, and that's fine. I understand your point about your view that additional days in court or additional duties. What I really, really do want to get at today is the process to set up the mental health court, the drug court, any other types of dockets that you would want to set up, because that was additional information that we had asked as a committee for you guys to provide so that we could understand what those additional scope of duties would entail. Because we do understand the argument about whether an additional day is an additional duty. And so we've gotten your opinion, we've gotten our council's opinion, and then that's something that we just have to discuss. But I feel like our time here is best spent digging into those issues, and then we'll have kind of the information that we need to proceed with making a decision.
And I agree, and I won't belabor the point, but it was after the last meeting, then there was an email and a couple of questions were asked to Nancy, and here's what Nancy says. You know, that, 1,000 divided by 4, or divided by whatever's 250, whatever that thing said, which is great. Mark was trying to simplify things for us, but I thought it was completely off base. He and I will probably just disagree on that characterization, but that was something that the legal counsel said, yep, that's right. And so that's why I brought it up, because I don't understand, keep going back to this when there's, I think, other things to look at. And because we're not in a situation where we have 1,000 cases and we're just looking to spread them out. And one of the things that we have talked about, for example, these aren't one of the 1,000 cases, is the oversight of the staff, of the municipal court staff.
And I understand that, and we have discussed that the supervisory duties are an additional duty. We agree with you on that, 100%. We have to discuss amongst ourselves whether we think an additional day constitutes additional duties. And then we do agree that setting up a mental health court or a drug court, the time it would take you to go through that process would be an additional duty, but I want to understand what that duty actually entails.
Well, and I'll explain to you. I just don't want to limit us to like these courts, because there's so many other meetings and things that we're not having that we need to have to facilitate. There's so many more things we need to do. I just want to reiterate to you that I don't want it just around, you guys are going to go do a mental health and drug court docket. I mean, just around that. But in that, so as long as I've made my point that there's 1,000 other things we also need to be implementing that we are doing a disservice by not doing, then, because we need to do those things too. We have a lot of things that we really need to do. But it appears that with regard to the mental health court aspect, it goes two different ways. Municipal courts are doing them either in an informal manner or on a formal manner. Now, which route we would take, I don't know, because again, this is part of the additional time that we would need to see what is best suited for our city. I know at first instinct, it's like, oh, well, we need to do the formal one, that's better. Well, I don't know that it is, because it's also working other places to do the informal one. But for example, let's see, Independence, nope, that's the wrong list. Okay. There's a mental health court happening in the municipalities, and I didn't call everyone, because I mean, it's not necessary. But Independence, Sugar Creek, Oak Grove, Greenwood, Jackson County Sheriff's Division 301, Bates City, and Raytown, all of them are doing some kind of informal mental health court. And they are, in some of them, they are integrating. God, thank God that Mark brought us water. He probably won't bring me one next time because I disagreed with his 1,000 divided by 4, but well, he probably will because he's nicer than I am. But nonetheless, they are doing some kind of informal court. And they're integrating their drug court kind of into it, because in speaking with a judge that runs, who's also been a judge, he's been there over 30 years, I don't know, long enough, let's just say, over at least, he's done, I think he is a judge in like 8 or 9 municipalities. He maxed out and had to give up some judgeships. But he He said he brings in the drug court into it because he found that his is informal, that the drugs are a form of self-medicating the mental health, which we get to, and which we see. And so he addresses both. He calls his a diversion program, and he's been doing it since 2009. Well, you contrast that with Raytown. Raytown also does an informal court. And when I say informal, it's not running around in your shorts and t-shirt and just having the defendant there to hang out and talk for a bit, but rather community resources are there. Comprehensive mental health will be there, Rediscover will be there, but it's more of an informal nature. Now in Raytown, she said she calls it the treatment docket. So they're giving it different names. But Judge Lopez delved, I don't know if that's a word, looked into the formal court, which, again, I don't know what would work best for us. But I do know these have been in action for some of them since 2009, which just screams at Lee Summit we need to start developing, and it's time in some fashion. And what they're doing is if you successfully complete your mental health court with all of these providers and you have court monitors, even in the informal system, and you keep your updates going, then you can graduate and have your charges dismissed or diverted. It is not something for everyone. It's not for the violent people who've done, same crime 50 times. No, you just need to go to jail. But this is to the people who want the opportunity, who have an issue that maybe we can address so that they, aren't knocking your car window out tomorrow night, So that's how Kansas City is doing the more formal setting. In Kansas City, theirs is formal, right? And they got everybody there, right? And there's no, in the informal ones, I don't think the prosecutor's there for the most part. Defense attorneys aren't there. It's more of a connection with the defendant and their monitors and their treatment providers and working in that fashion. But Kansas City has developed where it's just like an all-day thing and like everybody and their brother is there. So I'll let her discuss that a little bit more. And I'm trying to think, you shot me down on the others, so there's like all these points you're not going to want to hear. So let me.
I do have one question, if I could, as
Yeah,
far as
please.
the formal versus informal. You had mentioned, and I apologize, I've slept since then, I have a toddler, but someone had mentioned how at one point you got a notice from the state of Missouri that you weren't licensed to act as a drug court or a mental health court, but you had given an order like you were. If, I'm just trying to, the kind of informal style that you're talking about, would that not do all of the stuff that Missouri requires for you to be certified as a mental health court or a drug court? It would just be kind of how you structure things? Or? I'll
address it, and then Judge Lopez will address it better than I will. Jackson County seems to be fine with it for the most part. It's just what you call it and how you handle it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, they've been doing it forever in all of these different places. But for example, I know that Judge Nigro tried to do it in 2 different places in Cass County, and the Cass County presiding judge shot him down and said, which is not OSCA, but said, no, you can't be doing this. Mm-hmm. So I think there are a couple of places that unless you are, if you're going to do it informally, you still have to do it right. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not.
But it would be sort of working within, and this is not to say a decision from this dais one way or the other, I'm just really trying to understand, but it'd be working within the existing authority that you have, not going to OSCA and getting a bunch of new certifications. You could set this up without jumping through those kinds of hoops.
Yes, but you're exactly right. In order to make that decision on what's best for us and what's cost effective for the city, and most importantly, what is working? I'd like to see, I know 2 that are doing the informal, I can go sit with them and watch them and see what they're doing and be like, well,
What
this
you're
is
talking about makes sense. I really am just trying to clarify.
Yeah, I'd be like, well, this is stupid.
I could still understand calling it an additional duty to spend time looking into the formal versus informal options
Right.
and what each of those would entail. So I just want to make sure I know like kind of what you mean when you say formal versus informal.
Yeah, the non-OSCA sanctioned mental health courts.
Gotcha.
So I would want to examine that, because my first, like, oh, we have to do the formal one, we got to do it the right way. Then I'm like, but do we? How can we we're just wanting to reach people, we're wanting to help people so that our citizens are safe. So that's mostly what I looked into, that all these places are doing it, how they're doing it, and then they work, and then something she and I talked about, I said, well, if one of us does the mental health court and the person will not participate or is unsuccessful, then we'd have to wall each other off, and then they would maybe come, say she's doing the mental health court, they come before me for their criminal sentencing, So, so that they will work within the mental health court. Because why are you going to work with me and tell me about all the drugs you like to go do, when at the end of the day I might say, okay, I'm kicking you out of mental health court, now I'd like to hand you a sentence. So we've had lots of conversations about that, but I'll let her speak. Yeah, you like cut out half my notes, but that's probably a good thing. I will let her speak with regard to maybe the formal aspect, the way that could look just on that court, but I still want to stress we have other things that we need to do.
Okay, so we kind of, like she said, we kind of individually talked to different people.
Another water?
Just so, oh, it's okay.
She's going to have to go to the bathroom soon.
So I talked to Jim Whitteman, who is the Jackson County Municipal Court Judge, who is currently doing all of our cases that we send out there, as well as the other cities. She also talked to Gary Helm, who initially created that mental health court docket in Jackson County. He's the one that she said has like 8, different municipalities after Ferguson and everything reorganized. You can only do 5, so he's cut out a few. I also talked to Casey Clevenger. She is a judge in Boone County. She is a representative for the state treatment courts. So anybody that has questions about the state treatment courts from different perspectives can contact her. She does a mental health court docket. It's 50 people in one day. What Mark had sent you about treatment courts kind of gives you an overall view. I think it was from 2019. But that does not include all of the mental health court docket. There's lots of kind of specialty courts, whether it's veterans court, mental health court, drug court. There's a DUI court I learned about at a class I took last week, a couple weeks ago with judges. There's a lot of people are doing drug court, DUI court now. So this kind of all falls into the area of, if somebody's got a drug problem or an alcohol problem, so we try to deal with it instead of just keep sending them back to jail, or maybe they're running into people and killing people in car accidents, or should we try to fix the problem and maybe they're not, I think you used the example, knocking on your door at 3 in the morning to ask for a sandwich last time we were here. So all of these courts are designed to help people with different kinds of substance abuse, mental health issues and all that. So everybody is doing it a little bit different, but there are certain things, certain standards that we need to go through. So what they do, their docket is 50 people in the whole day. It is very, and that's all they can do because there's so much that goes on with it. In her courts, and this is what we would need to do if we were going to follow a real formal plan, and even if we weren't, we'd have to have you have to have a prosecutor, a defense attorney that has contact with the defendants, a treatment provider, and I will get into who I talked to on that side of things, a case manager and a probation officer. Then we'll have to have a law enforcement component, and you can also have outside people that can help facilitate. So you're going to have some kind of facilitator anyway. I talked to her about that. She put me in charge with Katie Doman, who is at OSCA, and she is the coordinator for OSCA for all of the treatment courts. Now, this is something where you don't just say, we're going to start mental health tomorrow, a mental health docket, and just start setting people on it. So one of the things that they talked about is you'd have to get a steering committee. And so the steering committee would sit down at what do we hope to achieve? how do we want to do this? If they do this, do we kick them out right away? If they don't show up, do we give them another, just all of that stuff. We have to go through and figure out what the policies and procedures that we are going to implement. That would have to be regardless of what model we used. We would have to get all of this in place first before we could even start setting anything up. In Boone County, they have a sales tax that funds that, so they get they got an allotted percentage, and that helps run their mental health court process. And this was marketed for it, so everybody in that area is great. And maybe somewhere down the road, we can do that here too. But she does hers at the county level. I talked to Jennifer Craig, who is the CEO of Rediscover, and I also talked to Shannon Moss, who is Rediscover's Director of Clinical Services. And I talked to each one of them quite a while individually, and I learned a lot about how mental health court dockets are funded. And there is a lot of money through OSCA. There's also in mental health, the Division of Mental Health also allocates funds for mental health procedures, policies, things like that. They also allocate money for treatment. There's apparently a big shakeup right now in the Department of Mental Health. There's some kind of audit or something. I don't know the details, but they're currently doing audits. There's a lot of young people that are languishing in nursing homes that are getting paid. The nursing homes are getting paid for things that are treatable. So there's money going out there that they're going to try to pull some of these people back out and do different things there. But there's a lot of money there that is available to do mental health court and mental health court treatment. So Rediscover does not think there will be any kind of a problem with them being able to, be able to fund themselves and their role in any kind of mental health care that we decide to do. Shannon Moss, when I talked to her, she was really excited. She said, let's sit down and start meeting. And I said, well, we're not quite at that stage yet, but they've got a lot of ideas. And she said the timing couldn't have been more crucial because of everything going on at the state level, and because Kansas City has also asked Rediscover to get more involved. So they would be able to, and the right here in Lee Summit, Rediscover would be our at least one partner with us, and we might have somebody else too, but to provide those case managers. They're doing it now in several different courts. They know what they're doing. They would come in and provide the staffing for us. Judge Altieri and I have no background whatsoever in mental health, or psychiatric issues or conditions or anything like that. So they would partner with us to come in and staff the courts. So the mental health courts, everybody has to come at least once a month. And so they would be there once a month. So if we did a one every week, they would have people every week. So it would if we did 2 a week, however we did it. So they would have, the people have to come in, they get sent out, they get referred to the agency. There's a whole, and I know you want to know all those details, but Rediscover would be having case managers making sure they were doing all the things that they were supposed to be doing. I know Casey Clevenger said there's a whole component to it. You got to make sure that people are eating. You got to make sure, they have lots of other needs besides just straight mental health. It causes additional things, like now they have no house because they can't work. They need to be able to visit their kids. They're losing their custody of their kids. So there's a whole bunch of things that go along with this that would need to be addressed. And those in the more formal routes like they're doing, they're able to do that. Judge Altieri and I just can't set a docket and call it mental health, even on an informal basis, and just start doing things. That's when the bells and whistles are going to be going off. We have to have those community partners. We have to have the community partners that come in and help us with the court, provide the treatment options for the clients, make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And like she was saying, we can't send everybody we want to send to Jackson County. A lot of people have worn out their welcome in Jackson County. And in certain situations, we are acting almost like a treatment court for some people, because we'll say, go do this and come back next week, and I want to make sure you've done it. Let our probation officer know what you've done. So we're kind of getting more of a handle on them and making sure we've got our thumb on them, so they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're not out there, causing additional problems in the community. But we have to have our prosecutor's office on board if we're going to dismiss. That does not, if they're going to dismiss the charges upon completion of the mental health court docket. That doesn't mean all these cases are going to be dismissed. A lot of these people will not be eligible to get their cases dismissed, but at the formal level, we're not dealing with felonies. So the way they've explained it to me too is they can deal with people for 3 and 4 years because that's what their sentence would be. So in ours, we can try to figure out how to utilize the time we have. Most of the local municipal courts here are doing 6 to 9 months-ish, depending on the situation. So we would have to take all of that into consideration and how much time could we actually work with these people. Now we could, as Katie Dorman said, if you had 6 months, 9 months to work with somebody, you could make a huge dent in what their mental health issues are, get them on the right medication, things like that. So we could do a lot. But it like she was saying, it all comes down to we need to figure out what is best for our court and the kind of people we're seeing. But everybody that I talked to said, it's definitely can be done. There's a lot of steps that we have to start with. And the main thing is we have to get that steering committee together, which would encompass all those different groups that I talked about. And then we could start with them planning what our mental health docket is going to look like. And then working through OSCA to get some funding there, the Department of Mental Health to get some funding for our case managers and Rediscover.
So I have a question. If you received the direction that, there's additional compensation available for you to go forth and figure all of this out and put it in place, how long do you think it would take you to go through all of this process of researching, figuring out what direction you want to go, getting those relationships in place? Like, it's not something you can turn on tomorrow. Like, what do you think a reasonable time frame for that is?
So if we're going to do a more formal route, both Casey Clevenger and Katie Dorman both told me, to get the community providers and the steering committee together and all that stuff. Yeah, it's going to be 4 or 5 months, 6 months at the very soonest. We have been kind of doing some of that work right now as it is with some of the people, only we're not calling it anything. We're just bringing them in on a weekly basis. So we can start doing that if we have the additional days to do that before we formally launch a mental health court docket. But that's going to take a while, depending on which direction we go, to get that all in place anyway. And one thing that she mentioned to me, I want to make sure it's clear. It's not going to necessarily require our prosecutors to dismiss the cases once they complete mental health court. We can require them to go through that as a condition of probation also. And that's what we've done. Sometimes they don't qualify for go back to mental health court in Jackson County because they've gone through it too many other times and been kicked out or whatever. But we have made people go through a mental health court type program where we're directing them what to do, where to go, and things like that, to keep a handle on them, because there's a lot of people that we call them frequent flyers that are just in and out of our court all the time doing with really dangerous type of behaviors that they're not getting addressed unless somebody is making them address them. And so it's safer for our community in general if we can make them address them. Because if we can't make them go do something, they're going to continue their same behavior. And a lot of people will, when they know that they are looking at jail time, they'll do anything to stay out of jail.
We don't really have the luxury of declaring someone incompetent or competent. There's no city nor budget for that. Nobody does that. It's just you can't do it. So we're not supposed to proceed unless they are competent, which is a very low standard, is whether or not you, I've not read it in a minute, but whether or not you understand the charges against you and whether or not you are able to assist counsel in your defense.
Can you just make sure you're speaking into the microphone just so that it's captured for the record?
Instead of just screaming at you.
I can hear you just fine, but it won't get onto the recording if you don't speak into the microphone.
Because I'm sure everybody's going to want to watch this.
It's been.
Yeah. No, so I'll repeat what I was saying. We don't have the luxury in our court, but we're not behind. No court has this, where you can have a psychiatrist evaluate someone to determine whether or not they're competent. So we get stuck. Like, what am I supposed to do? I had someone recently, a defendant who just wanted to talk to me about a woodpecker that he saw that stroked out. That's all he wanted to talk about, so I sat and listened, because I'm trying to ascertain with what he's saying. Is it drugs? Is it mental health? Okay, which one do I think it is? But we can't force then a disposition on a case. We can't just hold them in jail because they don't know what is going on. We don't want to just let them out. So we can't really, so that's why it's so important to us to help them with some of these issues, because it's just creating a jam. But I do want to mention, there's so many things we want to do to get where we need to be and then be better. Kind of want to be better than the other courts, to be honest, you know. And like, it's really exciting for me that she knows all this immigration stuff, because now everybody wants her as a guest speaker. And I'm like, she's representing us, and it makes me look good, and I don't even know anything about it, you know. And so I know we can get there, but we just need that. So while we're developing this, while I'm waiting to go sit on a docket to watch someone who does an informal or a formal diversion, or we have a meeting next month to drive to Oscar to meet with so-and-so, we have other things that we need, that we'll be doing. So it's not as if this time is just going to be, just waiting.
Sure.
So we have lots of things that we could work on.
Okay, well, thank you. Is it okay if we kind of start some discussion and maybe ask you guys some questions as we go? And
of course.
Yeah, okay. So just to level set once again, the main question that we've been discussing is what additional compensation could be given without an intervening election. Now, there's nothing to say that I believe one judge position will be up this April and the next one would be up 2 years from April. Is
Correct.
that right? There's nothing to say that 2 years from April we couldn't have a very different compensation package go into place to reflect the growth of the city and just the additional duties that the job the additional time that the job requires at this point, the way that our population has expanded. So that can be its own discussion. But the question is, between now and then, what can we do? We could have a raise go into effect for the judge that is elected in April, and then, but not for the other judge. The last time we did adjustments of compensation, we chose to make everybody's effective at the same time, so you didn't have two people in the same role that were getting paid differently. We did the same thing for the council members, that we didn't want to have half of them on a different schedule than the other half. So, but those are options that are there. But then, without an intervening election, we can give additional compensation based on additional duties. At this point, our outside counsel has told us that splitting up a docket over multiple days, but running it basically the same way doesn't count as additional duties. So like whether you work, like my husband works a 980, right? So he works 80 hours a week, but into 9 days, so he gets every other Friday off. I work, 80 hours over 2 weeks. It seems like he works 80 hours a week. That's a different story. But then he does it in 9 days, whereas I do it in 10. So I work 8 hours a day. He works more like 9 hours a day. But that's just different ways to structure basically the same workload. So the question is, what is considered not just restructuring the existing workload that existed when the judges were elected, even if that was maybe a bigger workload than it should be, and what is considered new duties is how I understand the conversation. I think we've all agreed that the supervisory duties of supervising the court staff definitely counts as new duties. The process to set up new court dockets, to research and set up new court dockets, and however that looks, that would be a duty in of itself. And then if it was an actual formal mental health court or formal drug court, that would count as an additional duty. I'm not 100% clear on whether a more informal mental health court or drug court would count as additional duty, although the way that you talk about it in terms of structuring it, that would have more personnel and a more, it really would be different from how the cases are handled right now. And to me, that kind of sounds like additional duties. I think I want to discuss that with colleagues and kind of see where we come down on that.
And just for clarification, we cannot even do that right now with the amount of caseload that we have. Mm-hmm. So we would not be able to do that on the existing 2 days, even an informal one.
Just trying to kind of lay out what I understand the current state of discovery. I mean, we're not doing discovery, but you know what I mean, and so my initial thought, and I'm curious to hear my co-committee member here, is if we look at this as a process that's going to take some time to set up, best case scenario, at least 6 months, it sounds like. And that's after we get buy-in from the rest of the council, which takes some time to get through, maybe we look at this as a 2-year process where in the interim, there is a raise for additional duties that include the supervisory roles, the work to research what it takes to set up a new docket and start establishing those relationships, and trying to think of how to phrase it, but basically that there would be some additional compensation over the next 2 years, but before the April election, to see if we could have a discussion about a more significant raise for both judge positions to go into effect after an intervening election to account for all of the other additional duties. Because I feel like there was consensus on the dais that it is a bigger role than it used to be, that these may not be new duties that have suddenly appeared since you were each elected, but they are new duties that have accrued over time as the city has grown, and that it might be time to have a real discussion about changing the base compensation for what you're doing right now.
I would certainly agree with that. But things are just on an ongoing basis. We have the Green Street, which is super cool, that was done, and it looks great. And that's an attraction. And you know what attractions bring? Attractions, you have to have them. They're wonderful for the community. They also attract criminals. That's what that does. So it'll attract criminals, and then they're going to be downtown. Then they're going to go over to what we've now established as some premier shopping districts. So it's just kind of an ongoing thing that things are going to happen that we need to stay up with. But I think we're still, and we can come back with a more comprehensive list. I think it is being underscored how much, we had 2 meetings today. We should be having meetings with the police department, but we don't because we don't have time. I was able to stay late and squeeze one in last week about an issue. We're supposed to meet with our court administrator, but we don't have time. We're supposed to meet with her and our deputy court administrator, but we don't have time.
I do have one other question. And this is really just coming out of just an idea that hasn't been discussed with staff or the rest of the council. But if a new salary were to go into effect for the judge elected in April, at that time, would you guys be open to having one judge that would have more duties over the next couple of years than the other judge, because there would be a chance for, I don't even know if that makes sense. I'm just trying to think of what makes sense, because really what we're trying to stay within is the bounds of the law that says without an intervening election, we can't raise salaries.
But that's it. We don't like the word raise. We are not asking for a raise. Raise has never came out of our mouth. It's compensation for additional duties. We cannot get a raise during our term. We don't want a raise. If it was a raise, we'd have asked for it a long time ago. I have never asked for a raise. I've never wanted one. And I think if one judge, when you start to have the disparity of one judge has additional responsibilities over another judge,
I'm thinking more like if one judge were to have 2 days of dockets and the other judge only had 1 day of dockets to have kind of salary increase, and then the other judge would take on an additional day of dockets once they had an intervening election.
But that's trying to do it with the intervening election, because then it would be considered a raise. There's nothing in the law that says you can't have the additional compensation for additional duties now. I think it's being underscored how much we're needed at the courthouse. When we, supervising staff, well, that sounds real easy. Well, when the city forbid me from supervising the staff against the law, we had bullying investigations. It was just out of control. So
again,
I'm saying
I'm
we have
just trying to
so
understand
much that we need to do.
What is on the table and what's not on the table. So it sounds like for you guys, having one judge take on an additional day of court with additional pay, and then the other judge not do that for a little while, that doesn't sound like it would be appealing to you. I really just want to understand.
Yeah, no, I know. I think it's good to brainstorm. I always say no judging and brainstorming, because I'll throw out some really stupid ideas. But No, and we've talked about that, like a hybrid system or something like that. But we both strongly feel we each need, you need a judge an additional full day. And I've got all these neighboring cities, and they've all got 2 judges that are all there 4 days a week. We've already done that research, because we're like, well, is it us that thinks this? No, we're actually behind. Everybody's already having the 4 days a week. Because we have so much that we need to do. So that's why we wouldn't need to coincide it with an election or anything like that. Now, if it's a raise, it's different, and it would be difficult to get into an inequity
Okay. I think
situation.
If I could just make one quick point. I think, and she's mentioned it several times, and I just want to make sure, we do not agree with the analysis that we are asking for additional compensation just for the number of cases. We're not saying that. We believe, and I did not find any case law out there that said this anywhere in the state of Missouri. I'm sure if Nancy Kenner or Brian Head would have found it, they would have brought it up. There is no case law out there that says giving a judge who's been elected during their term, giving them an additional day is not an additional duty. That's you guys, I think there's a foregone conclusion that that additional day is not an additional duty.
And respectfully, judges, I fully understand your position on this.
But I think that all the conversation that we're having is that's out the door. We're not looking at that. That's what I want to make sure. That's what Judge Terry is trying to say. I think that's the whole crux of it. And
I really respectfully, I understand, and I need to ask my other council member up here his opinion on it. Like, that's the next step here. Like, I'm trying to get, like, here's a basket of options, here's everybody's opinions, now let's have a discussion. So you guys can keep saying it, it's just like, I think we understand your position on it, and we understand that
okay, well,
you
I
don't
just want to make
agree
sure,
with
because that's
the
all I've
outside
heard is
counsel's opinion.
that's not even being considered because it's not an additional duties. That's what I think that's what she was trying to say several times.
I
just want to make
understand.
sure that we're not in agreement that that's not an additional duty.
I understand. Okay. So, yeah, Councilmember Funk, please, I would love to hear your questions and thoughts.
I'm going to step away from the additional duties as far as adding another day to the docket, just to wrap my head around something that I think is important as the mental health court. And Judge Lopez, you said 4 to 6 months to make it formal would probably be that time frame. And then when you say, I can't remember which one of you mentioned, the defendant would have to come one time a month to keep up with his or hers, that person's probation?
Not necessarily a probation. It's the diversion program, or the mental health court program is dealing with all of their specific issues. So they're given a list of things that they need to go, treatments they're supposed to go, doctors they're supposed to see, therapy they're supposed to go to, whether outpatient, inpatient, or whatever, and then come back that next month, kind of everybody collaborates. Okay, is this person, what else can we do? What else do they need? So it's at least once a month. Some people require a little bit more, depending on what their situation is. So it could be just once a month, it could be more.
And no infractions, no law violations, no police contacts. There's quite a bit that would need, it's holding their hand. I don't mean that in a degrading way, but holding their hand while they get the help that they need to try to get them stabilized.
Sure. So just not asking for an exact number, how many of those would you think you would carry as a mental health case?
Well, and then and I don't know if I think we talked about this briefly. We don't know what the numbers are. I had a couple on the docket last week that were set last week, and at that point, their attorney said, can we do mental health court? A lot of these are handled outside of court, so we don't have the exact numbers because our prosecutor's office makes that decision. This person qualifies, they get screened in our court, then they get sent to Jackson County. So we don't really have anything to do with them at that point unless they're kicked out for noncompliance and come back. So we don't know what the numbers are, but certainly if we are managing it ourselves, there are a lot of people that I see. I can't force the prosecutor to send somebody to mental health court. Sure. But if we're doing our own mental health court, we can certainly grab a lot of these people that are having these issues, her and I, and we can require them to do our mental health court as a condition of their case.
But you would think that you would have one day a week set aside that you would just run a mental health court. We would see that sufficient enough cases that probably once a week you would have to have a mental health court to see that many people.
I think, in my opinion, it'd have to be every week. Because some people we need to see every week, depending upon the severity of their issues. I don't know if it would take a full day like that other I hope not, to be honest, because we have other things we
You
need to do.
think it would take once a week?
Oh, it'd have to be every week. I believe at this time, maybe we could get into every other week, but there are some people that we that we just have to keep resetting weekly just to make sure they do better if they see us.
I think for you, and as far as the discussion goes, obviously, they're supervising the court staff. Obviously, it's going to take, I feel it's important that we do a mental health court. I think it's going to take some time and labor to get to this 4 to 6 month time period to get this done. I feel that most of council would probably feel we would want a more formal setting to involve all of the steering committee folks that you mentioned would be involved in that. I've got to probably have you or maybe staff, Mr. Dunning, clarify for me. I know we don't generally have compensation discussions in public settings. We usually do those in.
We do for elected.
Okay. But I think the timing, like, we just couldn't send this to council and say, hey, we want to give a X% increase to the judges. That still wouldn't happen until the next election, right?
So what we're discussing today is that we do, under Missouri state law, have the ability to give a salary increase for additional duties before an election. So if we're saying that when you were elected, you didn't have to supervise people, but now you do. When you were elected, you weren't told that you were going to have to set up a mental health court and a drug court, but now we do want you to go forward and try to do the work to set that up. Those are additional duties, and we can pay you more even though you haven't sat for election again. So the question is, do we also consider an additional, just breaking the cases up over multiple days? Do we consider that additional duties that would justify additional compensation in addition to these two other things? And then, and I think we do agree that especially if there was a formal specialty court that had the OSCA certifications, that would definitely be an additional duty. I think we need to kind of decide as a body if we would consider the more informal court based on the recommendations that we've gotten from our council to constitute additional duties. So do you?
I am in agreement with you that compensation is deserved for supervising the staff, for setting say, hey, we're going to move forward with the mental health court. It's obviously going to take some legwork and things like that, so that's additional duties. Mm-hmm. When it comes to adding another day on the docket, I think hearing from what I've heard from a few folks, not that you always get the better part of our society in your courtroom, but folks who have, I don't know what, if we said as a council, they say, hey, we're going to keep these 1,000 cases on your 2 days a week that you're doing, but we don't feel like it is serving our community the best. Maybe there are some people getting overlooked in the system since we don't have a mental health court or we're not doing it. And we as a council said, we would like to see you add another day to be able to maybe help a few more of these people that are getting lost in the shuffle. Does that constitute addition,
And just for clarification.
Weighing somebody's legal opinion.
No, it's okay.
That's why I'm
Can I
looking at
just
you.
clarify one quick thing? I know we keep saying 1,000, 1,900, whatever. I have 800 or 900 cases usually on every Thursday. So that doesn't count her cases. So that 1,000, I know we've heard that multiple times. That is not the right numbers. I mean, we're probably seeing, 1,800 or so
I don't
a
think
week.
we're trying to,
Yeah.
I don't think we're, I
Yeah.
think it was an analogy of saying,
Yeah.
hey, if there was 1,000 cases and you just divided it up amongst
I
these
mean, we
deals,
could
you
also say,
still.
would you rather work 16 hours today, or would you rather work 8 hours Monday and 8 hours Wednesday?
Well, I
That's-
do work. I go in for my docket, and I don't normally get lunch very often, nor does the staff, and they're all working overtime because we never finish at 5, so.
And I'd like to make mention, we didn't bring it with us because we didn't know it would be addressed, but it's not just the mental, like, okay, well, if we have an extra day and they do this, this, and this, well, that's a whole different conversation. Okay, well, then we need to add a bond forfeiture docket because we don't have one, and we need one. And I did one at home.
I think that's where, not to interrupt you, Judge, but I think that's where I'm going with, in discussion with Chair Shields, is if there are things getting missed that are an opportunity to help someone to collect some bond money, to do some other things, if that is direction that came from us to say, hey, if we can help more people and better the court systems by asking you to go to an additional day, hey, maybe it's helping on the caseload a little bit, but we're also probably getting a little bit better benefit out of what we're doing, is that additional duty.
Right. And
I have a response.
to me, the question is, was it an expectation when you were elected, right? And seeing this number of cases and meeting with these different staff people, it seems like was, but supervising the staff and doing all this legwork to set up new dockets and having new drug and mental health dockets wasn't. But I also think long-term, given the growth of the city and the workload that the courts are experiencing, that it makes sense in conjunction with, we haven't even talked about today, but the court audit that we've talked about before, but like long-term, it makes sense to increase the number of days that the judges are in court and increase the compensation commensurate with that, just understanding that we have grown as a city and it's a more intense job than it was 30 years ago. But it's not a more intense job than it was 2 years ago when you were elected. So like, I think they're to me, it's two different discussions. It's one that we have, should we be doing a larger increase just for the basic job of being municipal court judge? And I think the answer is probably yes, based on the discussion that I've heard at this dais. But until there's an intervening election, what can we do between now and then? And to me, it's not as big of a raise, but just to start throwing out numbers, maybe a 20% raise to account for the court supervision and then the legwork to go out and start talking about what these new dockets would look like and researching them. And then when we're ready to actually implement them, what I would like to see is, the judges coming back to us and saying, okay, based on the direction that we got, we went forth, we looked into this, here's what we would like to do. We would like it to be effective June 1st, just throwing that out there. And when we make this effective with this new structure and these new dockets that we will jump through the hoops to put in, then there would be an additional raise at that point based on those new duties. But I think that it's, at this point, it's those two duties and then maybe some more for when we talk about setting up a mental health court, and then a separate discussion about long-term, do we need to change the salary structure, which I think is a very fair question, but just like when we voted raises for the council, it just can't go into effect until after an election. That's my opinion. You can disagree, and I think we need to send it to the full council for discussion, because I think there was some disagreement on the dais before when we talked about it.
No, I think we're pretty much in agreement.
May I
I
add
just
to
need-
something that you were speaking about?
Sure.
Like it was indicated, well, are getting the people the help we needed. Something that was being not utilized was placing defendants on electronic monitoring, okay? Because we are single-handedly, the two of us, blowing through the jail's budget. We are at record numbers on keeping people in jail. But there are some people that are indigent who could maybe be out in a different manner. So we've had meetings. These meetings have been, these were not, this was not being done 2 years ago. So if we need to get into a list of things that are new from 2 years ago, that's going to be an entirely different meeting, and it's going to be long because we've done a lot and we've done it on our own time. So like we met with providers and who just recently signed a contract with Lee Summit for different ways of electronic monitoring. And that had happened back in COVID, but it happened now because of the push of the judges, because of us having meetings, working with people. Like there's something called V-Check where we can monitor someone for $3 a day. And then talking about keeping people safe, do you have an ankle monitor? Well, there's one, you can then have an ankle monitor that has a victim notification, where if you've got somebody who just for what cannot seem to stay away from another individual, well, maybe a hybrid sentence, they go to jail, then you slap that on there, because what's going to happen is you get within a certain amount of distance, it's going to call the monitoring company and say, hey, John or Jane Doe's getting a little close. And they're going to call them and say, what are you doing? And then once they get closer, it's going to automatically notify the police department. The victim's getting notified. Everyone's getting notified that that person is too close to you. That is something we've done within the last 2 years. So not only I'm not here on some like, oh, I want to breastfeed and take care of everybody's mental health issues. I want to take care of the victims as well and the citizens in general. So like that is an example of a new duty that we've done. We're set up something called V-Check. We've set up something called Backtrack. We've set up something called electronic monitoring. But we're doing good, and we're helping people, and we're keeping more people safe, but we cannot continue to do it at this rate. So we can go through all the additional duties that need to happen, but like that's part of those additional meetings, and that helps victims when you got some wacko out there who seems to be obsessed with you. So there's a lot more that goes into it other than, well, we'll look for additional mental health deal, and then staff oversight, which you don't know what that entails. I'm sorry, you don't know what that entails. And if I asked you how many we have, I don't think you'd know. So I think there's so much more that needs to happen, and I keep hearing the word raise, which is very concerning because we're not asking for a raise.
We can change the word from raise to additional compensation if it makes you feel better. Because I think what we're here, Judge, is to help you get to where you want. Not to be preached at, because I know you guys are working your butts off, and I'm here, I'm in your corner. But I think Chair Shields and myself, I think the city manager, I think everybody that's elected will tell you none of us, not all of us did this for the money. We're all here to help people, and we're all here to help each other. And I think there's no sense in trying to, I think we have an outcome for the added days. I think it's just the way we have to get there. I think being able to add in additional compensation to help for all the things you're doing, like supervising the staff, starting to go down these roads for the mental health court and all of the other things you're doing, I'm all in. Let's get it to full council. Let's get it talked about. Let's get a number on the table. Let's see what we can do. I just don't want you to get frustrated because this is the process.
Yeah, and
this is the wheel that's starting to turn, and I don't want you to I see some frustration in your face.
Well, in all due respect, Councilmember Funk, We're not asking for raises. We're not here asking for more money.
I
We're
understand,
asking
Judge.
that we get additional dockets so that people aren't sitting there for 3 hours, so that we can do our job. And I know she asked last week, would you be able to, and would you guys just be, or last time we were, would you be willing just to give us another day? I have other jobs in other courts. I work for 2 other courts in addition to my own practice. I don't have another day that I have to give up something. So it's going to cost me money. I'm going to make a lot more with what I'm doing other places. We're not doing for this for money. I guarantee you, this is not for the money. But if we're going to give the city an extra day, that's why we're here. So if it's just about the compensation, we keep hearing raise. We are asking that you let us do this 4 days a week. And there's so much that we can do for the city that, according to the mayor's State of the City, we're not 107,000 people. We're operating like we were when we had 30,000 people. And I think that's the frustration that maybe you're seeing on our faces, because, we're feel like we're kind of spinning our wheels and we're still getting the same responses. We can only pay for additional duties. We want to start the additional court dates right now.
Law.
What's that?
That's the law. We can only pay for additional duties.
Right, and that's exactly, and we agree. But the
think-
additional day is the additional duty. Not to keep belaboring the point, but everybody's just said, oh, no, it's absolutely not. And I think that's the frustration too. Because when I got elected, I thought I would be working 1 day a week.
I understand. I understand your position.
We're on your team. We're just trying to find a different way to skin the cat.
We're trying to figure out how to get there in a way that we feel is legally defensible. I understand that you disagree. I understand that you're both attorneys. I understand that. We're trying to find a solution here. And something I didn't say earlier, because to me it just goes without saying, this is very, very valuable work. A mental health court would be very valuable work. I have close family members who struggle with very serious mental health issues, who have been incarcerated, and I want to see these kind of resources out there for them and people like them. I believe in what you are doing. You don't have to, the reason I didn't ask you a ton of questions about exactly what every single case looks like and exactly how is because I believe that it is valuable, and I trust you as professionals to set it up well. So just to be very clear, I really do believe in the work. I'm just trying to find out what we can do. And again, since none of this is a switch that we flip overnight, I think that there's a lot that we can do to get you moving and get things in process and again, I can't speak for the entire council, but I would be very good with having a target date of right after the April election 2 years from now, of having a much larger increase go into effect that we could figure out, just so that there's no questions of legality at all, and having some intervening raises for some intervening additional duties between now and then to get us on the path. Because again, maybe this drags out a few more months than it would otherwise, but we all know that nothing happens in this city overnight. So I think that what we're really talking about is it a 1 year time frame or a 2 year time frame? And that maybe it's a 2 year time frame to get us to exactly where we want to be. But I actually think, given how fast we tend to move on all things, that's not that unreasonable. I mean, I can have other opinions about that, but I feel like that's the consensus that we are coming to, at least to take that to the council as a starting place for discussion. Does that sound about right to you, Councilmember Funk, to say additional compensation for the work involved in continuing towards setting up specialty dockets and the supervisory work that's been taken on, a presentation to come from the judges once they decide exactly how they want those courts to look, and at that time there could be a discussion of some additional compensation for when those courts become effective, and then also before the April election to talk about a new base salary for judges going forward. Does that all sound like a reasonable recommendation to take to council for discussion?
I think it sounds reasonable to me, but I think, do we need to present a number to council as far as additional compensation right now?
I think it's always good to have something to start a discussion on, right? To give our colleagues, based on all of our discussions, here is what we think is reasonable, but we want your input on it. I know we had talked about, just for the supervisory duties, we had talked about something in like the 5 to 10% range. So the 20% that I threw out was just based on that plus additional for this other additional work that we've talked about. Is there a number that you would feel comfortable taking to council
I think
as a recommendation?
20 to 25% is good, but from a hypothetical question, and I'm looking for, since this is just discussion, if we said, going back to my, if we said we feel like our court system would better by adding an additional day, no matter what, you two got to come in another day. Can we compensate for that now? Not in April, not 2 years from April.
There's two things. One is, I don't know if it's our purview actually to tell them how to structure, like how many days to be. Like, I understand why it's being brought to us, but I also don't think it's our place necessarily to dictate it. I think it's like they're an elected official, the charter outlines duties. And just like we have the ability to kind of structure ourselves in terms of what committees meet on what days.
Right.
I don't know that it's up to us to tell them. I think because we're saying, here's additional duties of mental health court, drug court, and supervising, but it's still up to them once we say those are the duties to figure out when they do them, how they do them. That's really my thought on it. I understand the question, and it's probably worth asking the rest of the council what they think, but that's where I would come down.
To you two standing here, if we could get additional compensation moving forward,
if our colleagues were to agree for something in the 20 to 25% range,
is that a reasonable number for
you to continue looking into how you would structure these new dockets going forward?
I appreciate a move in that direction, and I agree, and I appreciate, well, it's not within our purview to be telling them what to do and stuff, but that's what we're here trying to tell you what we need to do, and there's more that we need to do. Like, we haven't had that discussion on what have you done differently in the last 2 years, what would be new, and I just rattled off all that stuff about that contract, but those are new things that we're implementing, and those were meetings that we had to have repeatedly and repeatedly. But, and I went back to the bond forfeiture docket, and then you say, well, and then supervising the personnel, I think there needs to be an in-depth discussion. Well, what are you doing? Like, how like, what does that mean? Because supervising one department might be different than another department, and we're a branch. And so, I appreciate the direction that you're trying to go, but I still feel we would have to pick and choose what we're able to do, which maybe is what we have to do, but we'd just like to be able to do our better jobs and do what we're supposed to be doing.
I'm trying to think. I'm just trying to figure out a way to push this over the line to get.
I feel like we've done as much as we can today at this committee meeting, right? I think this needs to be a discussion that comes to the city council as a whole, because obviously the two of us can't make this decision by ourselves. I think
we got it a little further along in the process.
But that we can lay out some of this information for them and then get their input on what those would look like.
Would you like more information from us? Would you like to say, hey, we don't care about population increase, it is what it is, you know? But would you like information as to what are these duties you keep talking about, not just mental, what are you wanting to do that's additional?
I think a written memo with that information that our colleagues could review before a meeting and have that as kind of a baseline of knowledge to start from for discussion would be great. And then if you want, obviously you're welcome to attend any of those meetings and at the very least make public comment, but I don't run those meetings. That's somebody of, you know, the mayor sets the agenda, so I can't say how he would run that discussion, but obviously you're welcome at any meeting. I just can't say that you get this slot to speak. That's not my discretion.
Okay. And would that, I know a raise would be based upon population growth, but would there be a consideration of, you know, the reason that we're having to explore different options is because of our population growth. We can't jail everyone. I mean, that's part of the extra work we're doing is trying to compensate for busting at the seams. But maybe council will know that anyways. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how it works.
I think more information is good. So it doesn't hurt to, and I think, you know, having kind of some that's just, you know, general background of here's how we got here, here are the duties, here's what we would like to be able to do if we could dedicate more time to this. Here's why we think it should be a 4-day-a-week, not a 2-day-a-week position, and, you know, just lay it out. I think that's always helpful.
What would be the proper form of delivery, to send it to you or do we send it to like
just to Mr. Dunning and maybe copy the city clerk, and then they can make sure to send it around to the full council.
Okay.
And then if the result of the discussion is an intervening smaller increase, but then coming back and trying to get something in place before April to be effective after an election, then that would be another thing that we would take up in this committee sometime yet this year. And so that information would be really helpful if we have that discussion subsequent to that. Like, we have to see what the full council does on this question, and then I think we can go and have a discussion about long-term, is there another increase to come after another election?
Okay, and then that would that bifurcate the judges where, well, if you're separating it, you know, part now, so it would be 2026, and then the other person would be 2028. Would that be right?
Probably not, because it sounded like that wasn't the direction that we wanted to go. It would, because what we did the last time was we passed it in, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember, but like say we passed it before April, right? But it didn't go into effect until 2 years from the date of passage, or I think it's about to go into effect in next year. Yeah, in May. So what we did was we made sure to pass it before the election that was coming up really soon, but not to go into effect for another 2 years, so it would go into effect for everybody at the same time.
Okay, is there a 2-year waiting period?
No, it's because everybody has to sit for election. So if we don't want to have one judge or one half of the council on one pay rate and everybody else on a different one, we had to wait until everybody had gone through an election cycle. That's why.
Okay.
Just to be fair.
I don't really understand, but I'll figure it out on my own time.
Okay. Well, because, and
I'm wondering,
we don't know who gets elected, but if I'm going to use different names because I'm not making any judgments about people standing here. If Judge Smith is elected in 2026 and Judge Jones is elected in 2028, we don't want Judge Smith to be paid more than Judge Jones, so we just say everybody gets a raise in 2028. We don't know who's going to get elected in either of those elections, but whoever is sitting in that seat in 2028, here will be the new salary.
But there's not a 2-year waiting period?
No, it's just,
okay.
So I could say, well, Judge Smith gets a raise in 2026 because they just got elected. Judge Jones keeps getting paid the lower rate for 2 years until after they sit for election again, whoever gets elected. But just so that people aren't all at different rates, that's why we did that waiting period.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I think we all have direction on where this conversation is going to go. Be excited to see the rest of our colleagues weigh in, because again, you're talking to 2 people on a 9-person body, so
Thank you for hearing us,
Yeah.
and I apologize if I felt like I was preaching. I just get eager, and I'm just like, I want to go, I want to do it, you know, want to help.
Know where you're at.
And so
You
it
don't
just
have
makes
to
you
preach.
crazy.
I know where you're at. We just got to find the right road to get there.
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if we still have Mayor Pro Tem waiting in the wings. All right, roundtable for the committee. As we already mentioned earlier, our next meeting is also on a weird day because we have Labor Day. So we'll be meeting on September the 3rd at 4 p.m. Do we have roundtable from the committee? Do we have roundtable from staff?
Just, the only update I have is in September, we will be looking at having that conversation around grants and in regards to all of the federal orders, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, this meeting is adjourned at 5:43 p.m.